Warning.
Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to the Devil May Cry 2 commentary, where we have to run away. Not that we're going to be doing that right now, because now we gotta do more fighting. But yeah, kind of in a similar vein to the end of Devil May Cry 1, where we pretty much had to fight off against Mundus, yeah, now we have our traditional Resident Evil escape sequence in another franchise that would later abandon its Resident Evil, things. Whatever, I'm not complaining. I love me a good Resident Evil escape sequence, and the music itself does also reflect that in a similar vein to, well, you know, Resident Evil escape music just with rocking guitars and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it is actually also one of my favorite tracks in the game as well, so I have no complaints. But yeah, you also have a very generous time limit of about like 12 minutes to escape, so really, not even really too sure why they gave us that much. I mean, you can pretty much escape here with pretty much like 5 or 6 minutes to spare, even if that, if you're quick. But yeah, whatever. I guess the time limit is primarily there for the very same reasons that I'm showing off now, really. Just to build up your style ranking so that you can acquire that S rank, so yeah, I guess it does serve its purpose, and yeah, compared to the rather unusual time limit that usually tends to go for more, I don't know, rounded and reasonable numbers, like, oh no, we gotta get out of here in like half an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes even. Heck, waste, I don't know who sets up these escape sequences. Arius, he's already a very unusual, you know, gentleman with all sorts of unusual antics about his power. Yeah, I can't imagine he's the very logical type either. He is a demonic sorcerer after all. And if there is one thing I do actually want to point out about Arius' character in the cutscene from the previous part where he meets Dante, I do like that, you know, compared to every other character in the game, it's like, oh my god, look at Dante, the son of Sparta, he's so badass. Yeah, he's pretty much just like, who the fuck are you? Yeah, you know what, piss off, Fury and Taurus, you deal with them. Which again, I mean, does show some pretty brass chutzpah about, you know, exactly what kind of man Arius is. Like, I mean, you know, a guy with even Dante's reputation, which, I mean, at this point is pretty well established. You know, he's killed, you know, one big badass demon emperor with Mundus. And even he's just like, so? I don't know. Again, it's a subtle bit of characterization that to me does give Arius a bit of staying power compared to most other villains in the series who, well, I mean, again, continuing onwards from 3 are basically either obsessed with Sparta's power, or, you know, are pretty much there in reverence of Dante. Part of which is also to build up the power fantasy, because, you know, when you respect Dante, or, you know, Nero, or whatever is being cool, you respect the player as being cool. Well, I mean, I say Nero, but they kind of do the inverse with Nero, actually, particularly in DMC5, where he earns the loving nickname Deadweight. Poor Nero. What do you like? Oh, well, then again, I mean, I suppose he did technically, you know, put a stop to, well, to kind of cover up spoilers here, Urizen, so, heck, Weast, really. I guess he does earn slight respect of his own, until he gets his own game. But that's neither here nor there in this case. I do wonder if Nero is eventually going to get his own Devil May Cry title all to his own without, you know, excess help from Dante and Virgil, but that does also tie back to what I was saying earlier. Can the Devil May Cry series survive without, you know, having to use Dante as a crutch for so many years, or is it pretty much just going to stay as a, no, we need to use Dante because that's the guy that people know from the games? In any case, so we'll pretty much activate these 3 nodes. Did you see nerds? Nodes, not nerds. And yeah, you pretty much activate the door, so yeah, I guess it does run on separate power systems. Some demonic, some physical, like electricity, or, you know, thermal power. Well, but yeah, in any case, these Puya birds are pretty much just sort of there to really just sort of do a bit of pip damage, and I guess build up that style ranking for what little that you have. But yeah, might as well get rid of them. I mean, well, honestly, why these demons are even staying here is a complete mystery to me. I suppose maybe it's under Arius' command that don't let Dante escape, or at least distract him long enough for me to get the rest of the Arcana, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems like these demons could be put to better use actively searching for the Arcana and getting them for Arius, but Yeah, whatever. I suppose his backup plan, as you'll eventually soon see, is to rely on Dante and Lucia to get the, the Arcana, and then just sort of pinch them from them like the little shite that he is. Fireworks. That didn't really work as well as I'd hoped, because, well, yeah, he was already on the ground, so, the fireworks ability, it didn't work as well as I'd hoped. Cartwheels. See, again, you can make Devil May Cry 2's combat, robust as it is, look pretty stylish. It's just a matter of, well, I mean, again, having to sort of intuit its movesets. I mean, again, its combat system compared to 3 is a little bit more in line with how you would typically interact with the first game, where you really sort of need to make the most out of the limited moves you have to make your own fun, really. But, I mean, again, the fact that it's blatantly unfinished, and again, I'm not going to say that 3's combat, makes things too easy, mind you. It's just a matter of going back to the first game's design ethos and sort of building on that. But, again, as I said before, I think Devil May Cry 3 through 5, especially with the refinements that they've made, has pretty much made ground combat for, the likes of Dante, at the very least, as refined as you could possibly get without anything else being excess padding, really. So, yeah, the only thing I can really say is that, again, if you're not going to go for more experimental playstyles, I don't know, I guess either continue to refine Nero or give him a few extra abilities to play with, or yeah, I guess maybe just to refine some of the gameplay ideas and enemy dynamics from DMC2 to see what you can do. Unless, of course, any of the creators have anything new up their sleeve, in which case, I don't know, I think the fans and audiences will accept it with open arms. Which, I suppose even in that aspect, I can actually sort of praise Devil May Cry 2's, well, sequels, for lack of a better phrase, for sort of being, significant jumps between each and every one. I mean, even in the case of, the Devil May Cry reboot, which a lot could argue took a little bit more influence from the likes of, say, Bayonetta, as opposed to, any of the Devil May Cry sequels. I mean, there is a lot that, the franchise as a whole did to sort of pace out its sequels to make each, successive game in the franchise one that, feels like a big step compared to the other ones. Not just, specifically in terms of, graphics or anything else, but, in terms of, how they changed up the gameplay here and there. So, yeah. I mean, there is a, there is a certain level of joy in pacing out your sequels to make everything feel like a big leap, as opposed to just sort of running the gamut and milking the stone of crystallized demon blood dry when those teats are thoroughly milked. Oh, yes, indeed. It seems like somebody was trying to take off and escape this wretched realm. But, yeah, how exactly, well, I mean, I'm guessing they were meant to, wheel the plane out and then reverse and fly out backwards with a, I guess a door that we just can't see for the cargo plane, but, yeah, kind of odd that you have the plane facing towards, that fan dragging things in. Yeah, whatever. But in any case, so there is a reason why you want to go inside that plane, not just for plot progression, because, you see that fan? Well, we're gonna knock it out. Although who exactly is piloting the thing, I have no idea, but I guess there maybe were some employees who were technically planning an escape. Curious, really. But, yeah, open the box and we get a missile launcher. One of the planned weapons from the first game, and I'm guessing that was going to be the initial Tony Redgrave, I'm gonna kill you, Dad, weapon from Resident Evil 4 / stylish, whatever, really. But yeah, I mean, the missile launcher is pretty much this game's equivalent of the grenade launcher from, well, the first game, really, where it's not really there to build up style points, but rather just deal massive damage towards enemies, style ranking be damned. But anyway, we have a way to escape through the little fan blade, and thus, we enjoy our victory of escape. And that would have been the end of the story, if it was Resident Evil, but it isn't, because we have more Devil May Cry 2 to play through, so onwards to new adventure, by which I mean another section of Lucia. And in this case, we actually get to see a little something, interesting here. Yeah, swimming controls. Compared to Devil May Cry 1, they're actually in 3D this time, so you don't have to worry about any of that sort of herky-jerk first-person shooter kind of things. But it does contain a few bells and whistles of its own. First and foremost being the ambient music that's, yeah, one of my favorite tracks in the game. And again, if you've been following this channel for a while now, you'll recall as being one of the tricks that I often use throughout Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories to eliminate the depressing rain that was under the sea for you and me, down where it's wetter, down where it's better. But yeah, all that aside though, again, as we continue to showcase Lucia stabbing you, the viewer. Oh yeah, we pretty much go onwards and upwards, and it's here where we start obtaining a few new weapons, and I did mention that, yeah, weapon variety, she be mighty lacking. Well, okay, first of all, deal with a secret area, and of course we do also have, you know, another amulet to collect, one of the more useless amulets to collect in the game. But yeah, additional weapons, these mainly coming in the form of, swords that Dante and Lucia can pick up, as, you will soon see as we collect them from here. So yeah, Lucia's basic swords are called the Cutlassier. These are the are they meant to be called Claymores? Claymores? It might be a cultural thing, probably have to do more research into that, but basically, yeah, in terms of your sword weapons, you basically have your basic weapons, you know, Lucia's Cutlassier and the Sword Rebellion for Dante. But yeah, what the Claymores have been to be in terms of swords is that you have long swords, and then you have heavy swords, much in the same vein as Dante's Death Sentence. A sword, one for power, and another of which for range, that's trading off damage output. Yeah, that's that's about all the weapons I could really manage in the game, which, yeah, is admittedly a wee bit piss poor, but given the development cycle, it's probably all they could really do, but at the same time, though, I do still feel like there were ways around it, but in any case, it's time for a cutscene. Oh yeah. Filler material. And so we have the Aqua Heart, an amulet that's meant to, like, improve your combat during swimming, but I gotta be honest, I barely noticed the fucking difference, and everything that I've ever seen of any other playthroughs of DMC2, I've never seen it make nary a fucking difference, really, so quite frankly, yeah, it's just kind of pissing in the wind, really. I mean, again, if there is a more efficient way to use the Aqua Heart part of the amulet, I don't really know how, and, yeah, needless to say, it's not going to make one of the upcoming boss encounters any easier, so like we should, I suppose. But yeah, in any case, to talk about the Claymore swords in any more depth, again, they don't change your moveset, again, everything's pretty much the same, it's just that, well, I mean, again, you either have swords for more power, you have your all-rounder swords, which is pretty much the one you start off with, and then you have, well, your power sword, with that being, well, one that Lucia doesn't really get until right towards the end of her story, and rather inversely, Dante gets a more powerful sword, again, as you saw earlier during the Resident Evil escape sequence, but not during anything else here, so it's kind of an odd contrast, but whatever. But yeah, in any case, though, even if you do have the Aqua Heart equipped, you can't get the red orb, because you're pretty much being pushed back by, you know, a blowing current of water. So instead, you pretty much have to make your way up and do some puzzle solving, which is part of the reason why I do enjoy this level a fair bit. You know, it does sort of harken back to the first game's design of, you know, solving tertiary puzzles, whilst exploring, you know, mysterious caverns. And again, as you can see with some of the paintings and, you know, architecture of the area, again, it's interesting to see this area just sort of illustrate, you know, the battle between, you know, the followers of Argisax and, you know, the Protectorate for the Vida Mali, and, you know, sort of how that battle occurred over the years, so again, there is interesting things to learn and see here and there, provided that you're more of a visual learner as opposed to sitting around listening to mounds of cutscenes telling you in 5,000 words what could easily be summed up in one picture. So yeah, it's a fairly enjoyable level that's unfortunately capped off by a pretty shite boss encounter. In any case, also returning from Devil May Cry 1, that I didn't really mention before, is, yeah, Sargassos. Although they've kind of disappeared now, but yeah, all they pretty much do is basically just hover around, take a bite out of you, laugh, and also shoot like little laser beams out of their mouths, so yeah, it's a wee bit pish, but yeah, in any case, this is also one of the few times where the game's lock-on mechanic actually sort of requires you to really sort of pay attention. Again, compared to the likes of DMC3, or pretty much how any other game, well, in history would have it set up, yeah, your lock-on is pretty much automatically fixated onto a target, so you need to toggle it between, you know, holding the L2 or R2 buttons to pretty much, you know, stop it from immediately locking onto your enemy. And then, you know, once that's all said and done, you can pretty much just go on your merry way and use it to, well, attack a lot of those nodes over there. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for the optimal weapon usage in terms of anything else here, yeah, utilize the crossbow. It pretty much works the same way it did in Devil May Cry 1, except it's a lot more of an automatic weapon here, so you can pretty much just open fire and, well, the world's your oyster. As well as a few skewered oysters. But that's neither here nor there in this case, and by the way, some of those artworks depicting a giant fish-like enemy. There was a bit of concept art in Devil May Cry 1 about such an enemy, but was never seen again, really. But whatever, I'm sure we'll never see any sort of dangerous fish-like creature, you know, ruining it for us all, making us scared and panicky. Don't worry, all smooth sailing. No problems whatsoever. Calm down. There's nothing wrong. See, even Lucia's doing a little dance to showcase everybody that nothing is wrong, and double-checking her cutlassias and whatever else. Yep. It's all gonna be smooth sailing from here. And here is where we fight the worst boss in the entire game. Yes, I know a lot of people like to joke and jape about lol-infested heli-chopper, am I right? But no, this is the worst boss fight in the game, for a multitude of reasons. The first of which being is that even the basic act of trying to damage this thing with your swords is laughable. As you can see here, it goes invincible, which completely fucks with your automatic lock-on targeting, so utilizing your crossbow is pretty much right out the window. And as a result of that, again, if you're thinking about getting some style points by dodging out of the way and using your trickster moves, no dice. You're not going to be doing much damage combat-wise, and likewise, you're also not really going to be getting much out of the way, so, yeah, how to damage the Tateo Bess. Honestly, my only means of damaging it is either utilizing your Divine Anger abilities while it's either in range of you, or while it's, you know, phasing into existence. So yeah, I mean, it is technically invisible, and you can damage it, but yeah, your lock-on doesn't really count for shit, so utilizing firearms is quite useless. Devil May Cry 2 shoot to win? Yeah, just try it here, buddy. But yeah, on the off chance that you run out of Devil Trigger and your Divine Anger doesn't really serve you well, there is an ulterior strategy. Basically, when it starts charging towards Lucia, pepper it with a whole bunch of cranky bombs. It's actually one of the few areas of the game where the cranky bomb is really the only efficient means of actually dealing damage to the bloody thing. But even in this case, though, that's not really much of a saving grace when you remember the fact that, again, much in the similar vein to the grenade launcher from the first game, it's really just sort of there to be dealing out massive damage at the expense of, you know, building up your style ranking. So, yeah. And again, even in that case, if the Tateo Bess does get a good hit on you, it pretty much throws off your groove, throws off your trajectory, so yeah, even when you do get it to stagger, well, you're not exactly going to be doing a very decent job of getting back into position, finding out where it is, and lining yourself up to basically give it a carpet bombing of grenade launchers gone by. Again, this is probably the most efficient run of destroying the boss that I've ever had, but I mean, even in this case, you can see right here that even on the normal mode, this thing will put you through your paces and just be a general pain in the ass to defeat. And again, unlike even the infested chopper, it doesn't even have like the whole sort of stylish, like, helicopter chase over the cross of the city, so again, it doesn't even have presentation on its side. And as a result, it's just a tedious boss fight that, again, even if you do have a means of, you know, getting style rankings, it's not gonna mean shit, and it's just an overall shit boss fight. So, in any case, Lucia, finish this thing off so that we can have some delicious fish and chips for lunch. Fuck that boss and all who sail betwixt her, but on that note, I'm Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and thankfully that's a Lucia exclusive boss, so Dante doesn't have to fight it. And next time on the Devil May Cry commentary, well, yeah, we're gonna check in and see how Dante's doing. Catch you next time.